Hey guys, what's up? Faramar here, and today I'm going to be going over the Guardian Mage Tower with you. So my initial thoughts on the fight are it's extremely difficult. I would say this is probably like a 9 out of 10 difficulty scale. Um, it is it is probably the hardest, if not close to the hardest Mage Tower challenge that there is. But it also has the coolest Mage Tower reward out of all of them, hands down, and that is the new Fellbear form. So, if you want to unlock your Fellbear form and you want to get through this fight just like I did, actually, I hope you get through it a little cleaner than me because my fight was a little scuffed. There's a few mistakes that I made in P1 as well as P2, and you'll see as we're going over this video, as this is my kill video for the fight. So don't judge too hard. I had been pulling this thing for so many times, and I've had several 1% wipes, and not gonna lie, I got a little sloppy, and I was actually surprised this pull here was my kill, because it was fairly sloppy, which will show you that if you try hard enough and you keep your mind on the goal, you can pretty much beat this almost anytime. So, let's go over the talents real quick. The main talents here are going to be Brambles, Wild Charge, Balance Affinity, and Incarn. Those are the main ones. Survival of the Fittest is actually very useful for reducing the cooldown on Bark Skin so that you can get the Brambles out on the Nether Storms. These are what I would recommend. And then obviously, Balance Affinity is so you can use Moonkin form to put out as much damage as possible in P1. And Wild Charge will save you from some knockbacks if you are, unfortunate enough to get knocked back by either an Infernal or a Tormented Eye. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and... Oh, let me go over what the consumables are as well. So, the consumables that I recommend are Potions of Unbridled Fury, which I believe are from BFA. And then Drums of Fury, which is essentially just a 15% heroism, which is very useful in P2 for killing the boss quickly as possible. Obviously, I use flasks, and then I also use some shadow oil from Shadowlands. And then another thing, I didn't change my gear too much. The main switch that I did with my gear, and pretty much the only switch that I did with my gear, was I used the Mechagon trinket from Mechagon. The trinket essentially deals about 6k damage without crits. Sometimes was dealing even more than that. So you'll see here, the very first thing I open with on my rotation is actually the Mechagon trinket. So as you're going into the fight here, one of the main mechanics, the main objectives of P1 is kill Inquisitor Varus. So you want to deal as much damage to him as possible. And as you're killing him, you're actually going to be running into a few different mobs. We'll go ahead and go over the first one that's spawning right here, which is a Tormented Eye. And essentially, what a Tormented Eye will do is it will put a beam on you. You can see it here. I'm sorry, it's not the best angle. But they will spawn randomly around Varus, and it'll put a spell on you called Inquisitive Stare. If you're not looking at the eye when Inquisitive Stare finishes its cast, you will be knocked off the platform. So make sure you're paying attention to that. All you have to do, and basically all I suggest doing, is put a Moonfire on one as soon as it spawns. Put a Moonfire or a Sunfire on one as soon as it spawns. You don't even have to worry about it. It will die before it finishes its cast on you. Otherwise, make sure you're looking at the beam if you don't get it immediately on there, and it will die from one Moonfire, one Sunfire anyways. My very first goal with Varus is get him to about 70% health, if not lower, before the first Nether Storms are cast. And what Nether Storms are is you can see these portals here. These portals will actually spawn in 4 parts of the room, on all 4 quadrants of the room. So where these arrows are pointing, there is a portal that is spawning, and out of those portals will come Nether Horrors. Nether Horrors are the main damage threat in P1, so you want to make sure that you keep an eye on them, and make sure that they do not beat up Velen too much, which is right here in the middle of the room, okay? So, they will actually aggro immediately onto Velen, so you'll want to make sure that you get their attention. But, as I stated before, you want to get Inquisitor Varus to about 70% health before the first Nether Storm is cast. That's the goal that I had set for myself in order to get through P1 as quickly as possible. So you'll see here, I don't actually aggro them immediately. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cast spells on the Inquisitor Varus. I'm never even coming out of Moonkin form. In this whole first phase, I don't even go into Guardian form. I cast Typhoon right here to interrupt the Drain Life. Because Drain Life will actually heal him for a lot, so make sure that he does not get any cast to Drain Life off. Then I run immediately over here to Velen, I stand on him, and I'm just going to cast more damage into Varus with my Bark Skin up. With Bark Skin up, Brambles is going to be ticking onto the Nether Horrors, which will aggro them to me. So I don't have to worry about them hitting Velen, which is nice. Now that they're hitting me, they're going to start casting a spell. It's called Nether Storm. You do not want to interrupt the spell before it is finished casting. If you interrupt it before it finished casts, it will actually cause the Nether Horror to just cast it immediately again after the interrupt is up or after they are out of that CC. So you want to interrupt with Incapacitating Roar immediately after the cast is finished. So you see here, the cast finishes, and I cast Incapacitating Roar, which interrupts all 4 of them, and Velen and I have taken minimal damage from it, so, and it is possible to actually incap roar them right before the damage ticks, so you can take actually 0 damage from it if you time it perfectly, which here I did not. I was busy putting damage into Varus, which I was trying to get him to below 70% health, which you can see here. After the Nether Storm's complete, he's actually at 68% health. A Tormenting Eye will spawn here. I put a Moonfire on it immediately, and I just thrash and I swipe these Nether Horrors to kill them as quickly as possible. You'll see here, this is something you can do if you want to max min. This area around Varus will actually put a stacking debuff on you that will reduce your health total. So what you can do, if you want to maximize your damage onto Varus, but also be damaging the Nether Horrors, is you can kind of peek right into the edge. And you can see right before I got knocked back right there. You can actually peek right into the edge. Play it again here. And I cast Thrash when I'm right here. And what that did was that put a stack of Thrash on Varus, as well as put a stack of Thrash on the Nether Horrors. And I did not get the stacking debuff from the circle. So if you're quick enough, you can actually run in there and do that. So be careful with it, because sometimes you can get stacks from it, but most of the time, if you are, if you're doing it good enough, you won't have to worry about the stacks. So the next thing in the fight that is challenging is you have Infernals that will spawn. And you can see here, this Infernal will spawn in a random location on the platform. It is not always going to spawn right there where I'm circling him. So make sure you keep an eye on these guys. What I typically do is ignore them. I will put a Moonfire on them every now and then, and I will thrash them if they are near me. But for the most part, I ignore them. And I kite to the outside of the room so that they do not remain in the middle of the room. They are most dangerous in the middle of the room, because that's where you're most likely going to get caught up trying to take an orb in case of an emergency, and then they will knock you out of the orb and screw up your whole day. So, Infernals, don't worry about them too much. They will slowly die, but once they die, they will actually respawn within 15-20 seconds. So, make sure you use that time wisely to get away from them, and don't be on them when they spawn, otherwise they will essentially immediately knock you back. And if they are enraged like this guy is, he will knock you off the platform. So now, we're going to go over that trick that I was talking about. I see these portals spawning here, okay? You can see the portals spawning across the room. Remember, it's in all 4 quadrants of the room. So there's 2 over there as well where those arrows are pointing. And the Nether Horrors will come out. You can see here I'm casting Regrowth. which will immediately aggro them, and they will come directly to me. They will not touch Velen. They won't even know Velen is here. So, casting Regrowth as soon as they come out of the portal. You can see here, they are immediately out of the portal. I cast the Regrowth, which means they are now aggroed to me, and I'm going to pump more damage into Varus. So, when they run straight to me, I'm going to go ahead and put up Bark Skin so that the brambles start ticking again. And then I'll go into... I was in Moonkin form at the time, so I went ahead and Sunfired them. But then I go Bear form and I Thrash them, and I'm going to start swiping them too in order to kill them. Now you're going to run into one of the first big challenges in P1 that you have to keep an eye on. You have the Nether Horrors here casting Nether Storm, okay? You also have Varus casting Drain Life. All of these casts are very, very critical to interrupt. You don't want Drain Life because Varus will heal, and you don't want Nether Storm because you will die. So, the goal, and you'll see here, I'll position myself here, right on the edge of the decay that's around Varus. And as soon as Nether Storms finish casting, they will run over to me, and I will cast Incapacitating Roar, which will both simultaneously interrupt Drain Life, as well as the Nether Storms. So there, I interrupted the Drain Life, and I interrupted the Nether Storms, all with one Incapacitating Roar. So make sure that you kind of time that and you keep an eye on that. Also, while I'm talking about keeping an eye on things, we have a Tormented Eye that spawned up here. So I'm going to go ahead and Moonfire that as soon as possible, because I want to make sure that they die without knocking me back. Alright, now that I've got all of that under control, the Nether Horrors have died from the swipes. Something that you might wonder is, why am I always such low health in this phase? And the reason being is because in P1, it's all about testing your limits. You're not going to take an incredible amount of damage when Nether Horrors aren't up. And even when Nether Horrors are up, you want to just Frenzied Regen to make sure that you stay alive, and you want to kill them as quickly as possible with Thrash and Swipe. When they are not up, there are not many damage threats out. The only damage you're going to be taking is from Varus, and it's from the Mind Rends. So Mind Rend will deal, anywhere from like 300 to 500 damage. So that's threatening, but it's not super threatening. So you can take some damage, you can drop some health in order to trade back damage into Varus, right? Then when you're at a health amount that you think that, might be testing the limits a little too much, you can go ahead and regrowth yourself. Also, you can see here, the Nether Horrors are about to spawn again, which I'll want to regrowth myself anyways to immediately aggro them anyway. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to go ahead and hit the Drain Life. I'm still dealing damage to Varus. I cast the regrowth as soon as the Horrors are out on the map. This is a better view. You can kind of see all of them. There's one right over here as well. And they will run immediately to me after I cast this regrowth. So I don't have to worry about Velen here. I'm going to go ahead and pump another Star Surge into Varus, and then put a Sunfire on all of the Nether Horrors, and then I'll go ahead and wait for the Nether Storm to cast a regrowth while I'm waiting for them to run over to me, and I'll interrupt them with a Incapacitating Roar. I'll go ahead and put a Moonfire on that Tormented Eye and kick this Drain Life. Alright, so another thing to note in this fight that you might not know exactly what's going on here, but Velen, sometimes he's useful. Most of the time he's not. Sometimes he's useful. He'll cast these Holy Warts, which are these orbs that you see spawning around Velen here in the middle of the room. Okay? Each one of these orbs is essentially a health pack. It'll heal you to 100% health. But another very good effect from them is it will actually disorient all of the demons, which is all of the enemies, on the map for about 10 seconds. Okay? So you're going to want to use those when you are in dire need, okay? Now, something else to note is he'll cast one every 30 seconds, and they'll despawn every 2 minutes, okay? You can see here my Mechagon Trinket is actually coming off of cooldown now, which means we're about 2 minutes into this fight, which means one of these orbs is about to despawn, so I might as well use it. Whenever you're starting the fight, make sure you keep an eye on what the first orb is, what the position of it is, so you know which orb to use first, okay? Then, when you feel like it's time to use it, right, it's gonna expire anyways, so you might as well use it. We'll go ahead and see how I use it. So I'm actually being really greedy. I'm pumping as much damage into Varus as possible. I'm going to go ahead and use my Mechagon trinket here. I'm going to drop to incredibly low amounts of health because I know I've got this orb right here. I wait just the extra half second to make sure I hit all of these nether horrors that come out of the portals and interrupt them. Now remember, Nether Storm only matters to interrupt after the cast is complete, not during the cast. So they're going to immediately, after this disorient, cast Nether Storm, and they're going to run straight to me because I've aggroed them with the orb. So I'm going to go ahead and pump more damage into Varus with the Thrash, with a Moonfire. Now I've got the Nether Storms coming at me, and I go ahead and I incap more right here, interrupting all of them, and then I heal myself back up with Frenzied Regen. But there's a little bit of an issue. My bark skin is on cooldown, which means these nether horrors are not dying near as fast as I need them to. I've got Varus to 10% health, which means this phase is almost over as soon as I take down 5,000 more health from him. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kite around and I'm going to go ahead and just use a health potion here to keep me from dying. Then I finish off the nether horrors, put another Moonfire, go ahead, regrowth myself so I don't die to the Mind Rinds, and pump more damage into Varus here. I do get knocked by this Infernal, which is a very close call, but it's okay. Remember, just keep your cool. If something happens that's not on the script, keep your cool. P1 is very forgiving. P2, not very forgiving. So now, I've got the Nether Horrors, I've got Varus at 1% health. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to interrupt this Nether Storm, and then I'm going to pump all the damage to kill the remaining health of these nether horrors just as Krull enters the realm. Okay? So now, with Krull, there's a few things. P2, it's a damage race, and it's not as forgiving as P1. P1, you can drop to low amounts of health and be fine. P2, you want to remain as close to 100% health as much as possible. So you always want to be healing yourself, you always want to be topping off, you always want to be keeping an Iron first stack up and using your cooldowns effectively, okay? While dealing as much damage to Krull as possible. So, as soon as you kill off the nether horrors and you start on Krull, you're going to want to pop your Incarn, you're going to want to pop your potions, you're going to want to pop your drums, and you're going to want to do as much damage as possible to Krull. So make sure you get your Thrashes stacked, and then spam Mangle, and when you're at about 90 Fury, you can use your Mauls to drain your Fury, and then just keep doing that to deal as much damage to Krull as possible before the next wave of nether horrors spawns. So make sure you get as much damage in as possible before the next wave of nether horrors spawn, because when the next wave of nether horrors spawn, that's when the difficulty of this phase really ramps up. So now in this phase, Krull's going to start casting this ability here, which is called Annihilate. Annihilate is the hardened rage of this phase. Each time it hits you, it'll put a stacking debuff on you that will increase the damage of it by 100% the next time. Which means, after 4 or 5 stacks, this thing is going to one-shot you if you don't have a cooldown. So, actually even 3 stacks, it will one-shot you if you do not have a cooldown. So make sure that you're keeping an eye on your stacks. It's also not interruptible, so you cannot stop it. You can delay it with Bash, you can delay it with one of the Orb Disorients, and you can delay it with an Incapacitating Roar, but that is only a delay. He will cast it inevitably if you do not kill him. So, let's go ahead and see what I do. The very first Annihilate, it will do about 40% of your health. So, as long as you're above 50% health, you're probably fine to take this damage without any cooldowns up. Then he's going to cast, and it casts right there, but I interrupted it kind of quickly. He's going to cast Twisted Reflection. And essentially, what Twisted Reflection will do is heal him. And I believe it heals for about... Oh, I'm sorry, I rewinded a little bit too far here. I believe Twisted Reflection heals him for about 5 to 10% of his health. So do not let him cast this. If you let him cast Twisted Reflection, you're going to have a bad time. So make sure you interrupt this as soon as possible. Do not use your Skull Bash on anything other than Twisted Reflection in this phase. You have to kick it. If you do not kick it, he will heal. You will not be able to meet the damage check, and it will be game over. So, very punishing ability. So here you can see I'm stacking up. I'm doing as much damage as possible. He comes into the arena with about 34% health. I've got him down to 24% now before the first wave of Nether Horrors comes out. But now you can see the Nether Horrors are spawning, and they spawn in all quadrants of the platform again, which makes it very difficult. Something else to note is you now have Corvus, which is doing damage, and Velen, who is healing Corvus and also putting Holy Words down. They are generating way more threat. They are generating way more aggro. So as simply one regrowth is not going to immediately aggro these Nether Horrors anymore. Luckily right now we have Incarn popped, so we're already generating extra threat, so these should aggro directly to me. But after the Incarn is down, you'll actually need to go to the middle of the map and aggro them with a Thrash or a Swipe. Or you can even Bark Skin, and even there, with just only one aggro to me when I had Incarn. So these things are very... You have to really be delicate with them. Because if they sit here and cast on Velen, it will instantly kill him if you aren't there to interrupt it. So make sure that you interrupt it. Also, another thing that you might notice here is you got these big purple beams right here, right? And they kind of just go all the way through the map. They will knock you back, and they will deal damage to you, but they aren't super threatening. They're mostly annoying more than anything. So make sure that you just kind of jump over them or run through them. You don't have to worry about them too much, but keep an eye on them because they will push you away from these orbs. And if you need these orbs at the last second, you know, that can wipe you. That has caused many wipes for me. They will also push you into infernal knockbacks and knock you off the platform. So keep an eye on that and anticipate it coming because it's very hard to deal with in this phase. Especially all while dealing with that, you're dealing as much damage to the Kroll as possible. So now we got the Nether Storms. Same way to deal with them. I'm going to go ahead and Incapacitating Roar these guys. Here's another thing that got me in a few pools, okay? So the Nether Horrors in P2 spawn more frequently than the Nether Horrors in P1. The Nether Horrors in P1, the 30-second cooldown on Incapacitating Roar matched up with their Nether Storm casts, which means you can interrupt every one of them with an Incapacitating Roar in P1. In P2, they spawn more frequently, so you cannot interrupt every single one with an Incapacitating Roar, which means the second wave of Nether Horrors that come out in P2, you're going to want to stand and position yourself next to one of these orbs because you're going to need it to interrupt the Nether Storm. Okay? Another thing that's very crucial is you have to step into that orb as soon as the cast is complete, which means you cannot delay, which means you need to be watching for the Infernal knockbacks, and you need to be watching for the purple cutter beams, because the purple cutter beams and the Infernal knockbacks can make it very difficult and very tricky to step into this orb at the very last second. So keep an eye on that. Alright, so we went ahead and interrupted the Nether Horrors. He's casting Annihilate on me. You can see here I have only one stack on me, so this is not a very threatening Annihilate. All I have to do to live through this is I have a Bark Skin and I have 2 Iron Furs up, and I'm good, okay? I'm also at 100% health. Remember, in this phase, it's about remaining at 100% health as much and as often as possible. Alright, so that dealt about 50% of my health with Bark Skin and 2 Iron Fur stacks on me. So here we go. Now we're getting into the very difficult part. So we got the Cutter Beams pushing me out from the middle of the map, which you're going to want to be in the middle of the map to aggro these Nether Horrors as quickly as possible. You see here, I actually stepped on this orb, and the reason I stepped on this orb is because he put this green field around me, and the Fell, I forget what the spell is called, but it's like a Fell Eruption or something like that. That will slow you massively and deal massive damage to you, so you want to get out as soon as possible. I had a number of pulls where I needed to touch this orb to interrupt this Nether Storm as soon as the cast was complete, and I was not able to get there at the perfect timing. So at this point, I realized Kroll is below 15% health. I might as well touch the orb, top myself off, and disorient these guys as long as possible. I also have both Infernals on me here. So there's almost no downside to touching this orb. It's a dire emergency. It's a dire situation. That's exactly what these orbs are for. So while they're disoriented by the orbs, you can actually deal damage to them and it won't break. So right here, I'm going to try and deal as much damage and kill these nether horrors as quickly as possible, because it'll actually kill me. And I'm sorry, actually what I did there was a little bit better. I waited for them to cast the Nether Storm. I used my Mechagon trinket on Cruel while he was disoriented, and that gave enough time, that orb delay gave enough time for my incapacitating roar to come off cooldown, which I then immediately used after the cast was complete to kill them, or to interrupt them immediately. So now I've got the third Annihilate being cast on me here. So I immediately pop Survival Instincts, and I'm at almost 100% health, so I should live this. Boom. Deals about 55% of my health. So if I did not have that Survival Instincts up, I would be dead there. I immediately kick the Twisted Reflection. Luckily, the Infernals are dead here. So I had 3 orbs stacked up here. Velen sometimes will do this thing where he'll actually like overlap them, and it's really annoying. You can see here, I have 2 orbs, and the one that I just took was right here. So make sure that you are careful not to trigger all of your orbs at once if they end up getting stacked like this. Make sure that you only inch into the very outer edge of the orb. Now, Kroll is at a very low percentage of health, so I'm going to stop being greedy with these orbs. I'm going to go ahead and just repeatedly interrupt him, not let him do anything here, and I'll go ahead and keep killing. Right here, I get very greedy. So what do I do right here? I have Incapacitating Roar off cooldown, so I use it to interrupt that Annihilate cast, which is not a permanent interrupt. He will cast it immediately after, and it interrupts all of the Nether Storms from being cast. The one orb I need is right here, and that will win the game. But you can see here, I'm getting blocked by this cutter beam that's pushing me away from the one orb that I need to win this fight. And as I walk right to it, the border's right here. I'm right here. The Annihilate cast is about to complete. He's at 1% health. I die. And I die in the orb. But luckily, I had Cruel low enough health to where Velen and Corvus are able to kill him. And even though I died inside this orb and it didn't trigger, which was highly heartbreaking, we still were able to kill Kroll. Anyways, so that's my tips and tricks on how to handle this fight. It is very challenging. It's very difficult. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for the Feral Mage Tower Challenge.